Hello and welcome to another lesson on Judaism, beliefs and teachings. Today we are going to look deeper into the various different Jewish holy books and their significance. So in today's lesson, the plan is that we will identify what the main Jewish holy texts are, that explain their significance, explain the significance of the Torah, as well as the understanding the role of the Talmud and other writings included within Judaism, as well as then apply some of these teachings to exam-based questions. So to start off with, then we need to understand what exactly are Jewish holy books. So you have the Tanakh, which is the full Hebrew Bible. So that is effectively the entirety of the Old Testament of the Bible in Christianity. It will take a few books, with also the addition of a few others as well. You have the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, and it's the 5 books of the life of Moses. You have the Nevi'im, which is the prophetic teachings, kind of those teachings that are taught by the prophets and other sort of key people. You have the Ketuvim, which is the more diverse and poetic part. This is more where you'll focus on worship and things like that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Then you also have the Talmud, which is the oral law and the commentary. So originally, the Torah would not have been written down necessarily. It would have originally been spoken, the rules would have been spoken to each other. So the oral law also comes forward here. The other sort of texts that come forward are the Midrash and the Siddur, which is the prayer book, which we'll again talk about a little bit later on. So when it comes to trying to understand the Torah, we need to know that it's the first 5 books that includes Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, this was given by God to Moses at Mount Sinai. This availability of writing down the stories, as well as given 10 commandments and some of the key rules that Jewish people had to follow. The Torah was given to Moses on Mount Sinai to allow him to reveal that to other people and to reveal God to other people as well. Now, within the Torah, it contains 613 mitzvot. They are commandments, rules that they have to follow, in which the 10 commandments are also part of. Now, the Torah is the foundation of Jewish belief and law. If you were to look in the Torah, every single part of fundamental Judaism is found within it. When it comes to the core beliefs of monotheism and the beliefs around God and the afterlife, when you consider things like rules they have to follow and the laws they have to live by, again, they can all be found in the Torah. So the Torah is kind of that one book that they really, really need, sort of that moral guidance and guidance on how to be a Jewish individual. So here we see from the book of Proverbs, which, yes, isn't actually from the Torah itself, but does talk about the Torah. It says the Torah is the tree of life to those who hold fast to it. It's this idea that if you stick to the Torah and you continue following it, that is going to give you a well-sustained and healthy life to live. But just make sure that you do have a definition written down for that word mitzvah. I'll give you a second to pause the video here if you want to copy down the quotation or any of the key terms or any of the key points. We will be moving on in 3, 2, and 1. We come on to the Nevi'im, which is all about the prophets. So that includes books like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. They teach more moral and ethical lessons, telling us what is right and what is wrong. And the really good thing about doing it like this is that they usually are taught by themselves doing those actions. So it's an opportunity to not only know what the rules are, but also what that looks like in practice. It reminds them to stay faithful to the covenant. Now, covenant, if you remember from one of the previous lessons, we spoke about being those promises made between God and humanity. And these people come along just as a reminder to sort of say, yes, stick to the covenant, stick to everything that God has promised to you, because you will be rewarded for doing so. So here we go. Here's an opportunity to have another quotation here. I'll give you a second to read through it, and then we will move on in 3, 2, 1. So just to understand that quote, then again, it's showing that there is this element of moral sort of guidance that has to come through. So this idea that justice and righteousness need to sort of flow forward like water. So, and the thing with water is that if it's moving forward, it's not going to be stopped unless you put a barricade in place. So if you stick to living a good life, you're just going to continue flowing through right until the very end. Now, again, the key term there of covenant, a sacred agreement with God, we have already spoken about that though, so we are going to move on. And then have the Ketuvim, which these are the sort of the writings that hold sort of more sort of poetic content. So, for example, the book of Psalms, Proverbs, Job, the Song of Songs, and Ecclesiastes. Apologies on the pronunciation there. These are used in worship and daily inspiration. So the Book of Psalms especially is a very large book, consisting of lots of poetry, which has then gone on to become several sort of hymns and things like that, which are sung during services. Now, the thing about them is they purely express praise to God. They are cries for help in moments of suffering and calls for wisdom in moments where you don't necessarily know what the right thing is to do. So they are used for lots of different purposes, and basically whatever it is that you need in that moment, there will be a psalm, a proverb, or something out there for you to read, which is going to sort of keep you feeling sort of close and connected to God. You have this idea from the Book of Psalms, the Lord is my shepherd. Now, a shepherd is someone who guides you, someone who is going to lead you from one place to another, whether it be that from this life into the next, in terms of the afterlife. But again, this idea that saying my Lord in itself is praising, to say they are higher than you, but is also claiming that this being is, going to be the one to lead you, and therefore the things that you want, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your wants are. You're going to follow the lead of the shepherd who is going to be there in front of you. Next, we come on to the Talmud. Now, the Talmud is more of the oral law. So you have different sort of steps here. You have Mishnah, which is the written oral law. So that is laws that were originally passed around orally, so spoken to each other, that had then been written down over time. And then you also have the Gemara, which is the commentary that goes alongside with those laws as well. This basically explains how to live out the Torah's commandments. So it's all well and good having the commandments. If you don't have the instruction manual to go with it, it's going to be kind of hard to follow the instructions. So this is more sort of talking you through how to go about living in accordance with those rules. Now, this is central for rabbis within Judaism and allow for, in some cases, sort of modern interpretation. Obviously, when society was writing and speaking these rules thousands of years ago, society is very different now, meaning that it doesn't need to sometimes be modern interpretations, which is what we start to see with the separation of the Orthodox and Reformed Jewish people. And you do have this concept of halakha. That's the idea that Jewish law is based on written and oral tradition. So those sort of original rules that were either written or spoken, they are referred to as halakha. So it could be useful to know those key terms. The reason for this is if you are facing a big essay-style question in the GCSE paper, usually they will have the availability for spelling, punctuation, and grammar marks. The more keywords like this that you can use gives you that opportunity to get that band 3, to get those full 3 spelling, punctuation, and grammar marks. Here we see another quotation. It says, turn it and turn it again, for everything is in it. This idea that everything you could possibly need could be found within the Talmud. You do not need any other religious text because there is everything there for you. It allows you to understand every single rule, exactly what you need to do in your life, and therefore with that book you cannot go wrong. Everything you could possibly need is in there. Now, some other writings that might be of interest to you. You have the Midrash, which is the stories and explanations expanding from the Torah. So the Midrash, you could talk about like the life of Moses, and you can understand that at a deeper level. So it's looking deeper into the Torah past just the surface sort of value. You go into that sort of deeper understanding of the individual stories as well as the understandings that Moses himself had. And then you also have the Siddur, which is the Jewish prayer book used daily on Shabbat. Whenever Shabbat comes around on a Saturday, Jewish people are going to use the Siddur as part of their prayers. And in fact, their sort of main sort of declaration of faith, their main prayer is found within the Siddur. Okay, so what we need to understand now is why is it that these texts even matter? Why do they have value? Now, as we've spoken about already, it provides this idea of spiritual guidance. It tells you what is morally right and what is morally wrong, and they tell you how to go about being a good individual. Now, this is really important when it comes to the concepts of the afterlife. It also connects Jews to God and their history, the covenant that was made between God and the original Jewish people. But it also is crucial to their identity. Some of the rules that Jewish people have to follow make them undoubtedly Jewish. So in being able to follow those rules and following them accurately, they're able to connect on a deeper level with their actual Jewish identity and their sort of history and heritage that they have lived through. As we said, it does teach sort of the more sort of moral, ethical things, and not only sort of how to do things spiritually and how to connect with being spiritually, but also how to just be a good individual and a good human being in terms of abiding by the laws, having good morals and having good ethics. Now, the key sort of concepts that you're going to want to make sure you understand when it comes to the holy books and the holy texts are these ideas of revelation, which means that they were books that were revealed to, or information that was revealed to particular people. You've got tradition, which is where it's come from, either the oral or written tradition. And then you've got the use of the holy texts as well as the study, people who study them as a form of worship. So just in terms of trying to understand a deeper understanding of God and the beings sort of around that and the prophets and all of these sorts of individuals, in trying to understand them on a deeper level, that in itself is worship, because it shows that you have enough respect that you're going to take time out of your day to study them in real depth. So we have here from the Talmud, the study of the Torah outweighs them all. Now, one thing that Jewish people have to do is they have to be able to recite the Torah. They have to be able to read it out loud, which means that they have to be able to study it in order to be able to become a Jewish person. We now come on to then some exam questions, and I'm going to show you this 6-mark question, which for some exam boards is a question that's been around for a while. In other exam boards such as AQA, this is a fairly new question as of 2025 and the recording of this video. So if I was to go for the AQA structure of a 6-mark question, it would be explained 2 ways. Now, this is going to be similar in terms of what you have to do for this question, but the question we word different depending on the exam board. So the command words might be slightly different. So this says, explain 2 ways the Torah is important for Jews today. And you're going to want to include points on law and daily life, connection with God. So those are going to be the 2 main points that you're going to make as the question is asking you for 2 ways the Torah is important. It's important because it teaches them about law and the daily life. It's important because it allows them to build a connection with God. You can use the quote we looked at earlier on, the Torah is a tree of life. But what I would recommend to you is to use these points and this quotation. Make sure you reference where the quotation comes from to get that extra mark. Then all you have to do is explain how is it that the Torah demonstrates law in daily life. Well, it includes 613 mitzvot, so it gives guidance on how to do those things. Or it tells stories in the book. It tells stories about Moses and the connection with God and the covenants that were there, which allows us to connect on a deeper level with God. You have those basic points there. See if you can develop them. See if you can use that quotation to help you answer that question. For a 6-mark question, I would recommend around 4 to 5 minutes would be a good sort of time to sort of focus on. So if you want to sit there, put your phone to one side, set a timer, about 4 to 5 minutes, see if you can write out an answer to this question. My final word of advice to you when it comes to answering a question like this is use the wording of the question as your sentence starter. That way you can jump straight into writing and you don't need to really think about how you're going to start answering your question. We then get on to looking at the 12-mark question. Apologies for the title being cut off there. So usually with a 12-mark or a 15-mark question, you are given a statement. And that statement here is the Torah is the most important of all Jewish holy books. Evaluate this statement. And what you need to do is you need to give some arguments for and some arguments against this statement, which then is going to lead to some level of conclusion, which you're going to have some level of evaluation throughout it. So the 4 arguments could be things like the Torah was God-given, the fact that it is a core part of the Jewish identity and includes the 613 mitzvot, which give the Jewish people the rules they still live by today. You have the against side of things, so you have the Talmud interpretation to allow these things to apply to modern society. You've got Tuvim for emotion, so your availability to emotionally connect with God, as well as then you've got the ideas of the teachings from other prophets taught you things like ethics as well. Make sure that you do try and use those key teachings, the mitzvot, covenant, halakha, all your spelling, punctuation and grammar marks, and make sure that you are evaluating throughout your answer. So to recap what it is that we have looked at today, so we have looked at the Tanakh, which includes the Torah, the prophets and other sacred writings as well. The Tanakh is kind of the collection of all the writings. We've looked at the idea that the Torah is the foundational, but all texts play a role. So the Torah gives the foundation understanding of Judaism, whereas all the other texts start to add a little bit of extra sort of stuff that allows for a more full and complete religion. Talmud explains and develops Jewish law, so it gives that sort of running commentary on how exactly you should follow those laws and the deeper nuances of some of those laws. And hopefully now you can understand how you can use quotations and key terms to really benefit your answers. So without referencing in a 6-mark question, you're only going to get 4 or 5 marks when it comes to use of quotations. If you want to get really high spelling, punctuation and grammar marks, making sure you use that sort of higher level vocabulary, those sorts of key words. So rather than calling it the Jewish holy books, calling it the Tanakh, calling it the Torah, talking about the Talmud, talking about halakha, and some of those key terms as well, is really going to help you get those sorts of extra 3 spelling, punctuation and grammar marks, which could turn your 12-mark question into 15 marks, which would be a really big win for you guys in terms of trying to get the best grades possible. Now, I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has made sense. If you do have any other questions about some of the Jewish holy texts, do feel free to put a post in the community page or drop me a message privately, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much, guys, and I will see you in the next one.